Well, good morning, Liberal Kansas, Southwest Kansas, the Oklahoma Panhandle, and all other places where you tune in to get your news and views from the middle of America. Sorrel with the Leader in Times on Tuesday, August 1, 2023. Joining me today, Jim Rice. B. Simons is doing his civic duty, working the election this morning out at the Seward County Activity Center. Don't forget, Liberal City voters, you can go cast your ballot for 3 city commission candidates. 6 will advance to the November general election. There are 10 candidates to choose from, and we'll be back with you tonight at 7 o'clock as soon as the polls close. See, we try to make sure we're putting on our best journalistic foot before the election, and then after it's over, we can say whatever we want to because we can't affect anything. So I hadn't gotten the final pre-vote number. I know that the voting number wasn't that strong, but you have to remember, county people can't vote in this one, so this is only city residents voting today.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how many turn out. Hopefully you will get out there and vote for who's going to have the opportunity to lead your city.
And let's see, is this the first time you're voting for city commissioners?
Yeah, I think we've been in town, I don't know, going on 5 years, so I think I've done that a couple of times.
Oh, okay. So, because I know most of your life you never did get a chance to vote for the city commission.
That's right. All I could do was complain, and I couldn't vote, so I couldn't complain.
So you vote for county and you could vote for school out because you lived out, had the farm.
Yep.
But now you live in town, and now you can raise a ruckus on all
of
it.
I can give them what for, and I ended up here somehow. Thanks, thanks to one of your texts saying, "Are you in?"
Yeah. And you said, "I guess." Here you've been. We're going on a year and a half or so now. I mean, this has been a fun way to give news out there. And I want to say, since we added YouTube, I noticed, that the sound syncing up. We'll be working on that. So, we just bear with us. It's something you have to kind of watch and time and gauge and change some of the settings. So we'll continue to expand and improve, but you were able to find it on your television set yesterday?
Yep, yesterday I finally found it on my smart TV. The only thing was I just had to be smarter than the TV, but I think I finally went to YouTube and typed in the search just Leader in Times, and it popped right up. So anyway, that was pretty easy once I got on there, and it was pretty neat watching that on a full 65-inch screen. It's a big time deal.
Well, we'll start this afternoon. I'm going to bring it up, and you may see some on and off. Don't worry about those. They'll be just tests to
practice,
sync in the sound. And once we have the sound synced in, then it'll hold. But whenever you change it to another streaming service, that changes the delivery time, and the sound file is separate from the video file, and you got to just sync those up. So
it's farther to one than it is the other one. So it takes longer for that voice to get to the one than it does the other, I guess.
So just bear with us, and we'll keep improving it as we go. Again, today is election day. The poll will be open from 7 to 7, and we'll be back with you tonight at 7, so the 6 people who do advance on to the general. Also this morning at 10 o'clock, Sergeant Elliott will finally, 80 years after making the ultimate sacrifice, be laid to rest in his hometown cemetery. Sergeant Elliott grew up in Plains, graduated in 1937, joined the military. There wasn't an Air Force yet. They had airplanes, but they was part of the Army at that time, the Army Air Corps. And so he joined that, went down and trained in B-24s in Louisiana because the Liberal Army Air Base hadn't opened yet. Then he fought in Ploesti, and as one of the many places that he flew, he had flew double-digit sorties into Nazi Germany or German-controlled territories to fight for freedom. And finally, I think it was his 13th mission, which the planes usually only lasted 8, and the lifespan of pilots was only, or of people in the plane, not just the pilot of the plane, but the others, was between 12 and 15. So he was right at the bubble, and if you reached 20, I believe 20 missions, you were done. They'd send you home. You'd served out your duty. But he was around 13 or so when he paid the ultimate price, and then was unidentifiable in Romania and was buried in a grave there. But credit to the military to continue to find U.S. servicemen, use the newest technologies, DNA and a lot of other tests that they did, and said, this is Sergeant Elliott, and we're sending him home. And today at 10 o'clock, he will be back on the plains in Kansas, where he belongs.
That's a pretty neat story. That's good to think that they, have the capability of identifying those folks, getting them back where they belong. And, to have a local hometown guy especially, that does not happen very often. So anyway, good to see that he's back.
And of course, I've never met Sergeant Elliott. He died at 24, so he didn't have children, but what I do know is he was a Kansan, and he grew up in Plains, and that tells me a lot. I know he would have known about hard work and dedication, about caring for your neighbors and friends, and that you put others in front of yourself, because that's what Kansans do every day. And that's what farmers do, and growing more food than they can have, but growing enough food to feed the world here in Kansas. And he would have had that kind of background and that kind of willingness to go, knowing you might pay the ultimate price, but you do that so that others can have a chance at freedom, so that others can advance on. We live here today and enjoy what we enjoy because of the sacrifices of people like Sergeant Elliott. And it's worthy to honor those people on a day like this. I don't know, in my lifetime, I've never had the opportunity to see a World War II hero brought home. And so I will be there. And I hope anyone else who can, who's in the area, can go to Plains Cemetery 10 o'clock this morning. It's a short drive, about 30 minutes from Liberal. And I know it's not the most convenient time on a Tuesday, but this is exactly the day, 80 years later, because it was August 1, 1943. 80 years ago, right about now, those planes were leaving Libya, flying as close as they could to the ocean, staying low under the radar, to go to the oil that was fueling Hitler's army, to blow up those refineries and shut his oil supply off. A daring mission in 177 B-24s with 10 people each headed out to do that. They didn't all make it back.
That'd be a sight to see, them headed your way.
Yeah.
Mercy.
And they flew so low that those who made it back recalled that they could see the Romanians on the ground as they were coming in, waving at them and basically cheering them on, because the Romanian people were living under the Nazi regime at that point. And they were looking to be liberated. And how appropriate that the B-24 was called the Liberator, because that's what they did. They flew in with people willing to say, I'll die for you, but Hitler goes no further. Japan will go no further, and we won't stop until we get unconditional surrender. That takes something.
Yeah, it does.
And those guys did it, and we get to live in the shadow of the freedom of the tree of liberty that they planted. And Jefferson said, from time to time, the tree of liberty must be watered with the blood of patriots. And that was the time that Elliott did that for the rest of us. There's going to be a B-52 flyover at the event today. Fort Riley is in charge of the operations today. And so a fellow Kansan comes home. Election Day, honoring a World War II hero today. And Thursday, a lot of things going on, but one thing is the Seward County Republicans will be meeting at 6:30 to talk about the plan for the general election moving forward. And so you might want to go listen to that. Also Thursday at 6 o'clock, the Liberal BJs will be playing the Seattle Studs. And if you ever wanted a premier matchup on day one of the national tournament, that's it.
Yeah, usually you have to work your way up to that. But
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a Seattle Stud BJ game is more like a Final Four national championship game, not a first rounder. But in pool play doesn't mean they won't face off again later because, you know, 3 of the 4 teams in pool will advance to the single elimination bracket next week. So these first, you know, few days of the tournament will be pool play, guaranteed 3 games with you know, the other 3 teams in your pool, and then you gotta finish in the top 3 of that. The bottom team will be eliminated, sent home, and the other teams will continue to play for a national championship. So you've got the BJs, Hayes, Hutchinson, Great Bend. I think those are 4 Kansas teams in the tournament. You got some from Texas. You got Seattle, 2 teams from Seattle. The Seattle Blackfins, who I never heard of before this year, but they won their league. They beat the Studs out. And the Studs finished 2nd or 3rd, I believe. They finished 3rd. And so the Studs make it to the national tournament. Then you've got the defending national champion Santa Barbara Foresters. So, I mean, it's a good field of teams coming to Wichita to play for an NBC World Series championship. Liberal has 5. I'd like to have 6. One
There
more
you go.
star.
one more wouldn't hurt.
One
There's always
more.
room for one more.
There's one school, I can't remember where it is, but they put their banners up, or they put the championships that they've won, but they always leave a space, so it looks like there's one missing. They're gonna say, "What's that for?" The next one. So there's always a plan to add one more, and then when they put that one up, they design it in a way that leaves another hole for another one. So
Even if you have to build on a room, there's
yeah,
always
whatever
room.
it takes, whatever it takes. And so, you know, just if you can get to Wichita, 6 o'clock on Thursday, they'll play on Thursday and Saturday. They'll play again. So if you play on Thursday, you play Saturday. If you play on Friday, you play Sunday. And then 2 more days to get in the, or one more day to get in all of the pool play. And then based on your record and points scored and all these other tiebreakers, the top 3 move on. So you've got that going on. Back to school's coming up. I mean, it's already, you know, enrollment's already taken place.
Yeah, I noticed. We went to college yesterday and had lunch, and I noticed there was several more kids starting to show up. You know, already. The dining hall was about full yesterday, so a lot of kids starting to return. I think the softball coach told me that probably next week most of her team shows up. So anyway, it's getting close to that time, and the fair's coming up. You know, the county fair is not that far off. Remember when it starts? The 8th, maybe?
Well, there's going to be a story in the Leader and Times today previewing the demolition derby they're going to have.
It's
So
going to be quite the thing.
now, my question is this the last ever demolition derby? Because if they move the
Rodeo ground.
rodeo in
Yeah.
front of the grandstands, I think that pretty much will end. Or I don't know where else would you do a demolition derby?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I was out there the other day, still looking for that that time capsule. Had some folks came out and they brought a one of those metal detectors and around, and pretty soon, this is a rural fire department, by the way. Just give them a little credit. Anyway, they brought out their metal detector, and pretty soon, why, he said, well, there's something right down here. Maybe we ought to dig a hole. And there was 3 of them out there, and boy, they grabbed the shovel. That was one of them afternoons when it was about 104 in the shade, and there wasn't any shade. They dug a hole about 4 inches deep. And sure enough, we found something. But it wasn't what we thought. I had a probe, and we stuck it in the ground, and it hit something pretty solid. And then they pulled it out and stuck it down about 30, 35 inches, and hit something solid again. And I thought, man, maybe that's that vault. Maybe that's that time capsule. And anyway, we went to, or they went to digging. I was supervising. All I did was lean against the fence and watch because it was hot. But anyway, they dug down and got to where the object was, and it was a couple of, I don't know whether they were bolts or wagon parts or car parts, or I have no idea what they were, but they were metal. They were about 32, 34 inches underground. And then there was another little piece, kind of a sharp edge thing, looked like a spear tip. That wasn't, but anyway, that's all we found, and no vault. I found a couple of big rocks, and I think those are what the probe hit, because boy, it just sounded like that had to be it. But anyway, we covered the hole back up and went to the house. But so no time capsule yet. We'll just, keep looking. I'd still like to find one of those, somebody that had one of those ground penetrating radars that wants to come out and take a look. That'd be kind of fun to try to get one of those. And supposedly they can identify pretty much anything that's underground up to 6-8 feet. And so if somebody out there knows anybody that's got one of those, or could identify possibly a time capsule, that's been out there for, I think, 52, 53 years, according to what Mike Gatlin tells me. I remember when they were doing it, but I don't remember, where they buried it. I thought I did, but where I think that is, and there's a couple other guys that say no, it's on the other side of the track. So I don't know, but we're still looking. But if any of you out there remember that time capsule, and I remember him putting stuff in there. It was set up under a little tent out in front of the fairgrounds, that old ag building, when it extended clear over to the grandstand. They had a little tent out there, and Wilbert Vault was involved in it, and it was to show how well their vault worked after 50 years. And there were, I don't know, probably newspapers and business cards and all kinds of stuff in that thing. I remember seeing that. And anyway, but they went over and buried it, and then nobody ever marked it. So if you know where it is, you remember anything about that, you need to get a hold of me or Mike Gatlin, and let's see if we can't find that. I'd like to find it before fair time, but time's getting short now, and I don't know whether we're going to or not.
Well, I talked to Jim Garcia, and he used to work for Woolwine at that time. And he said Woolwine brought some stuff out and put it in there too. And they used to, Woolwine bought, when they put their building in, they bought the old Majestic Theater building too. So they put some Majestic Theater stuff in there. So I'm like, I want to see what's in that vault, because there could be some really good liberal artifacts. Because if it was 50 years ago and they put something in that was 50 years old already, there could be some 100-year-old stuff in there.
Yeah.
And, of course, I'm still very sympathetic to the Historical Society. It'd be nice to have some really cool artifacts to pull out of there and maybe put on display.
You bet. Yeah, I think it'd be very interesting to see what, anyway, but we got to find it. And so far, no such luck.
Well, let's see, would there be, I bet you in 70, 71, whenever it was that they did that, there's got to be probably 8-track tapes in there, I would think. Maybe someone put something in there. Was that the 8-track era?
I don't remember. All I know, and I think they've in there just to kind of cover cost of the vault and one thing and another, but I don't remember. I still remember that. I can see that thing sitting there on the stand and people putting stuff in it. But I don't know where they buried it for sure. And apparently nobody else does either because we haven't found it yet. But I thought maybe if it had a little metal in that concrete vault, maybe a metal detector would find it. And that one, it did the job. It found metal about almost 3 feet deep, but that wasn't the metal we was expecting. So.
Well, I watched a show. It was on for about 4 seasons called The Orville, and it was like a newer version of a Star Trek type thing, but they found a time capsule that was lost, and of course this would be in the future. So in that time capsule, someone had put their cell phone and had video and stuff on it. So they had to first of all find a way to charge it back up in the future because they wouldn't have any way to do it. But then they looked at this video of this girl who had put it in there to say, I was getting a new phone, so I thought, hey, why not put this in the time capsule, let people see what life was like. And that, so, it gives us a glimpse at life back then. I'm very curious as to what is in there, and I want you guys to find that.
Well, business in the past, that was a auto parts dealership. Gosh, they had about everything you wanted, kind of like Napa nowadays, but everybody, if you needed something, you go to Woolwines and get it, a lot of those businesses are, long gone. But, so it would be interesting, and I'm sure there's a lot of history in there and things that we forgot about. We could sit here and sometimes we'd name off like Shorb Furniture and Shorb Hardware and, Woolwines and some of those places that back in many, many years ago, Ezra Shorb had a hardware up on, gosh, I can't remember what that was, on about 4th and Lincoln, maybe. I can't remember exactly where that was, but I remember going in that place, and it had a great selection of hardware stuff, from nails to bolts to you name it, things that we used to use. But anyway, a lot of that stuff. So I'm sure there's possibly some of that in that vault. All we got to do is find it. So if somehow we can find that, have any idea where it is for sure, why, get a hold of us and let's see if we can't get that thing dug up and opened up, for fair. I think that'd make really a neat exhibit at the fair, 52, 53 years after, it was buried out there.
Well, I think what would be neat about it is if they find it, bring it up, and then schedule an opening where people could come out to the grandstands. They could have it out front and have somebody, start bringing the artifacts out, and just have an opening of a time capsule. That would be neat. Don't forget also, Thursday the fun runs begin, which means it's time for the fall sports season. And we talked with the girls volleyball coach out at the college. And I think that they're starting practice, and she said they got like 13 days and then it's go. It's game time.
22nd. Better get ready.
So that's a short turnaround. She got to learn a lot about her team in those few days and put 6 out on the court.
She's got 21 days to get it all together.
And so we'll see how all that goes. But, it's right here. The season, I'm ready. I know. We still got BJ baseball, and I want to see how that all wraps up. I'm ready for some football, though. I'm ready for.
There you go.
Just, get out and even the girls volleyball, get out and watch some of that. Soccer's going to get going, and it's just go time, and I'm excited to see what's going to get going. So, this is a very interesting time of year. Weather's getting, of course, it heats up right here, right before school's getting back in. But really, I think that's a little bit later. We've really had not so bad of a summer.
No, I remember a lot of Julys. It was a darn sight hotter than it's been. This year we get up to 92, 46, 98. But gosh, I was watching some of that Wichita weather, and they're talking 104 to 110 today in some places back there. And, with the humidity and all, it's, it's a little on the rough side. But anyway, we're one more month and then it'll start cooling down. And about September the 10th, it'll be wheat drilling time.
Bill Graham's asking, would there be a newspaper article from that time about the time capsule? And that's what I'm thinking too, but I'm trying to find the year, because one thing that changed here around that time, there was a publisher's change, and the publisher that came in the early 70s decided to go to microfilm instead of the bound copy books. So if it's after 71 or so, then I got to go look in the microfilm. If it's 69, 70, 68, 69, 70, somewhere in there, then I'd have it upstairs in a bound copy.
I think fair is usually in August, right, somewhere around the 10th, 15th, something like that, 15th, something like that.
And I'm sure
It was for
beforehand
years.
they would have been running articles to invite people to bring stuff
Yeah.
to put in it.
Yeah.
But they might have said, then it will be buried at XYZ, or maybe even a photo. And
Yeah.
that would tell us a lot. If we
Yeah.
could see a photo and see
Yeah.
where a wall in the background was or something
Yeah.
like that, it'd give us a really good head start. So you're right on, Bill. I've just been too lazy to go up and look in the books, because I mean, I don't know what year I'm looking for, and I got to look in two different places.
I would think if you looked in August of 70, 71, Mike seems to think it was in 70, maybe 71. So, I think probably in August during the fair. That's when the fair always was. I can't remember the dates for sure, but then it got to getting a little bit earlier. And
I'm really not a fan of the microfilm. I think that's a bad choice.
Well.
I like the bound copy books. You can flip the pages. Now, the microfilm will outlast it, I'm sure.
yeah.
But I might also get a hold of Nathan, because they kept bound copies out at the museum, but I don't remember what years they have out there. They may have those.
Yeah, they tried to keep every day's paper.
Yeah.
So
So
that could be.
I'll double check with him too. But
Somebody's got a little time, wants to do a little research. Get
Yeah.
on down here.
yeah, I'll let you get you upstairs.
You got about 7, 8 days to get that done.
And like last week, or was it the week before, we keep all of our historic copies upstairs in the storage room, but they were talking about living upstairs, so I took you
Yeah.
upstairs, let you see what that looks like.
That's a neat place upstairs, folks. It really is.
It could be converted, couldn't it?
Oh, sure. You could. What did you say? That was kind of like a hotel.
Yeah,
That was kind of like a hotel.
Yeah, you can tell by the rooms.
Yeah. It's all divided off in about 12 by 12 rooms. There's about, I guess, 5 on each side, something like that, maybe more. I noticed the numbers are still even on the doors. The old metal number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. They're still on the doors. There's a lavatory, a sink in each room, and then the main bathroom was down at the end of the hall. But tell you what, there's some history up there, and the old flooring, the old vinyl that they used to put down. I mean, there's some real history upstairs in this place.
My hope is that those people that stayed up there were just getting off the train, coming in and starting a new life and building
Yep.
liberal. The reality may be they were renting by the hour, but I'm hoping that's not true. I'm hoping it's the other way. But the space is there, and maybe one day we'll have to look at what a remodel would be up there if we ever get a downtown that's calm and that people could just, come down, walk down the street for something to eat, walk down the street to work a job. Just a pedestrian district would make all the difference in the world.
Why would you want to do that? I ain't nobody going to come down there and all, but I assure you, if you get something like that going, there will be little shops that start popping up down there that you had no idea, because little bookstores or whatever it might be, little boutiques, clothing stores, that kind of stuff, because it's happened in other towns. You know, I think Springfield, Missouri is an excellent example of that. You know, they started revitalizing that, and the next thing you know, well, somebody put in a little coffee shop, and then somebody put in something else, you know, and little donuts and coffee and whatever, and you know, it just brought it back to town, and I mean back to life. And you know, this, you know, here is the same thing, but you have to start somewhere. And you know, I think by, you know, making a few changes and making the effort and getting somebody excited about it, I think it's you know, it would be not only a fun project, but I think it would be very, very beneficial to the businesses downtown, and probably grow some new ones. But I still hear folks that, oh, that's just ridiculous. Why waste the time and the money to do that? Well, you know, economic development has to start somewhere, and you know, I think this is a, you know, a neat project. You know, it's just going to take one to start it. You know, every one of them, whether it's in Springfield or Denver or, you know, Hayes. I think Hayes is a good example of, you know, downtown revitalization. You know, they had somebody that, kind of my understanding, that, talking to a friend of mine, that he talks about how they did it. They had a developer that came in, and he decided on a few stores that he wanted to redo the fronts and perhaps some of the inside. And if there was a business in there, why, he finished an empty one, and then that business next door, if they wanted to, they could move into the new one, you know, but it had all the old metal ceilings in them, and you know, all kinds of stuff. So, but Hayes did an excellent job of, from the pictures I've seen. I haven't been there for a long time, but I think they did a great job, and it expanded to, you know, about a block or so on each side of Main Street, you know, and we've got that potential, certainly. You know, we've got the new brewery bar thing that they're going to get open over here one of these days at the corner of 2nd and Lincoln. And so, you know, that would certainly be beneficial to the folks that, if they decided to live here. But it just creates a different atmosphere and a different style of living. And you know, it doesn't have to really be anything fancy, but I can see the potential upstairs here. You know, gosh, you know, there's a, you know, probably a couple of apartments they could put up there, pretty easy. They wouldn't be huge, but you know, there's plenty of room for probably 1 2-bedroom, maybe a 2-bath, or there's room for a couple 1-bedroom and single baths. So, you know, I don't know. Another thing up there I really liked was seeing the old doors and that transom window above the door. That was kind of before air conditioning, I think, before we all turned to WIMPs. But anyway, you know, those. I mean, it's just a really neat place, and a lot of history upstairs there with those old transom windows and the woodworking. You know, it's still in great shape. So, you know, there's a lot of potential upstairs, and I know other buildings down the street, you know, on both sides of Main Street. There's that same upstairs availability, you know, to do something like that. So what that could turn into could be something really neat for downtown Liberal. But somebody's got to start it, man. Somebody's got to start it, man. You can't start it by saying, oh, that'll never work. We never did that before, so why would we want to do it again? But people lived upstairs here once upon a time, even though it was a, you know, maybe a overnight or maybe a weekly rental or a monthly. I don't know what, you know, what it was, but the rooms exist up there. So yeah, somebody lived up there.
Well, Patricia says convert the upstairs to a museum, and you know, you could do whatever up there,
Sure.
convert it to anything like that. I could tell you what would be fun in the short term until you did something with it. It could really make a cool haunted house at the Halloween time, because you could have in each one of those rooms a scare, and they have doors that connect some of the rooms, so you could snake people through, you know, going room to room and getting your scares in each one of those, and really have a fun haunted house.
Yeah, it's pretty much there. You know?
It already
No doubt
has a
about
spooky
that.
feeling. It's got
That's
the
right.
old stucco And those
Yeah.
doors you talked about,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a flashback. You're stepping
Yep.
back in time when you go
That
up.
one room up there's got the old vinyl flooring in it, like they used to put down the linoleum, is what they called it. You know, and it's kind of like, it looks like the 4th of July, because it's got all these starburst things. Reminded me a lot of, you know, the fireworks out to the BJ game the other night, when those things would go up and then they just explode, and
Yeah.
they just explode. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
that's
kind
kinda
of
the way with
50s.
that.
To me,
Yeah.
that's like a 50s feel to it, even though
Yeah.
I don't think that thing was even being used by the 50s, but I could be wrong. But it just has that space, you know, when Sputnik and all that was
Uh-huh.
going on and everyone was thinking about space, it kind of has that era feel to it.
Well, it has a vinyl piece out in the center of it, and they didn't go clear to the wall. But it's vinyl, and it's kind of like you used to do with the carpets. And it lacks about, I don't know, probably 16 inches of going clear to the wall. And then they nailed the edge of it down with this little metal trim,
Yeah.
you know, with nails about every 2 inches apart. So, you know, but that's some old, and it's kind of a rose pattern, you know, all kinds of roses and colors and one thing or another. So I don't know, it was just neat. And then the I think the original flooring is probably like tongue and groove one before's, but like everybody else, you know, they got tired of looking at that old wood, and now then the going thing is to tear all that vinyl back out and, you know, polish those floors up. Man, there's some nice floors, and that's probably Hart Pine, you know, came from the center of the tree. There's some really nice lumber, especially that around the trim on the doors and all that. You don't find wood like that anymore.
Well, in the remodel of this in 1991, one good thing they did up there was there are nice windows overlooking downtown Liberal right out front in the depot. You can get a good view of that from above, and so there is some nice window work up there. But who knows? One day, who knows what will happen with those upstairs spaces in downtown. Well, and there's other things going on around the country that we think you're going to find some interest in. We're going to bring it. Fall off the bone ribs, dripping with our signature barbecue sauce. Tender pulled pork and brisket smoked to perfection. All served with family recipe home-style sides. It's all waiting for you at the Brick House Barbecue and Brew. Open 7 days a week, your barbecue appetite can be satisfied anytime for lunch or dinner. Brick House serves full dinners, combos, sandwiches, and take-home packs. Enjoy a variety of brews on tap or a mixed drink. Shaken, not stirred. Give your taste buds a treat at Brick House Barbecue and Brew, 24 East 2nd Street in Liberal. Like us on Facebook and see our full menu at brickhouselk.com. Well, I was able to check the sound on YouTube while we had the little break, and it's not too far off. I'm going to make one more adjustment here, and maybe this will get us a little bit even closer. So we'll keep, like I say, we'll keep tweaking it in and see if we can't make that better for you as we continue to try to improve the show. And yesterday, there was a little testimony, if you didn't get a chance to see it, former business associate of Hunter Biden. And he kind of spilled the beans a little bit, saying, oh, President Biden was, or Vice President at the time, Biden, was brought on the phone about 20 or so times. Not necessarily to talk about the finance or whatever, but to show that, yeah, I do have access to that, and you can say hi to him right here. Here's the Vice President of the United States. Say hi. And it was to sell the brand of the Bidens and the influence. And basically, it was Hunter who told Washington, hey, you need to fire this guy in Burisma that's investigating Burisma. And then Joe got right on it and got the guy fired.
Had the money available to bribe the guy, you know, or the country, you know, to you know, you're not going to get this $1 billion if you don't fire Shokin. And you know, when they said that, whenever they said that, I thought that was rather suspicious. That, you know, you're not going to get the $1 the money unless you fire this guy. To me that, rang a bell right away quick. And then he also said, if you don't believe that, I don't know, somebody questioned him about, well, what gives you the authority to do that? And he said, well, if you don't believe that, just call Barack. So, to me, I think maybe Barack might have known more than what's been let out too. I don't know for sure, but but on the other hand, just to make you feel comfortable, why the lawyer assured everybody that Joe never did anything but just talked about the weather. When he was talking to all of those oligarchs and whoever, those 20 some lawyers and phone calls that he made to the different folks. He was just talking about the weather and how things were, and well, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but what? I think it's pretty evident that the money transferred and it came in. They've identified through a lot of bank records that there's at least 10, possibly 50 million that came in. But I haven't ever heard anybody say what happened in return for the Biden receiving that money. What kind of a deal? What did he sell? Why did he receive the money? Because, ordinarily, in most folks' life, if you do something for somebody, then you get paid. If you don't, there's not much. Just because you got on the phone and got to talk to somebody, nobody ever sent you a check, I don't think, transferred $1 million or $2, in your bank account. But in this instance, I would really like to know, and I think that information could be available with a little research as to what really happened as to why there were so many people willing to transfer into possibly 20 shell companies, maybe more. What really happened and what kind of a favor was done to receive that money. But you don't hear that. It's just, well, they got the money and that's it. I want to know why they got the money, what he did, what he sold us out for, if he did. Or maybe, maybe he sold them a new car. I don't know, but it's just strange to me that nobody ever talks about what favors were done to receive that kind of money.
Newest poll out today, the New York Times Siena poll, and again, New York Times is no bastion of conservatism. 39 approve, 54 disapprove, a minus 15 as more of this starts coming out. And also in their poll head-to-head, Trump versus Biden is a 43-43 draw. You look at the recent polls, the Messenger poll has Trump up 4, The Economist has Biden up 4, and New York Times is a draw. So, we're just as close and as tight as we've been, and we're still, a year and a half about out from the election. So you would think if a president was just, burning it up, he'd be, ahead in the polls, but that's not what we're seeing here. And, so you've got some issues there. Some of that testimony yesterday, it's obvious that Joe lied about, have you ever been involved with your son's business dealings? And he said no. Well, if you're on phone calls saying, hey, Dad, here's a guy I'm doing business with, that sounds to me like you were involved with that you were aware of his business. Did you know of any of his business dealings? You knew the people he was doing business with. He called, Hunter called and said, hey, I need you guys to get rid of this guy investigating Burisma. I'm on the Burisma board. We need to end this thing. And they did.
Yeah.
And Trump says, hey, you guys might want to look into that. He gets impeached.
Sure. Yeah,
but the vice president's son calls and says, look into this, get this guy out of here, and they do it, nothing.
Yeah. Trump, in a matter of days, I think, but this has been going on for a good long spell, and I thought got that Jonathan Turley up there. He's a good Democrat, and I think he's a pretty square shooter. One of the very few square shooters they got. But he made some comments about, this was getting a way out of line. And I don't know, maybe you got something there that, a quote from him or something about it. I did see somebody sent me this email last night, and this is, I don't know who Michael Tracy is. I think I've heard that name, but I don't know who he is. But anyway, it said Hispanic GOP primary voters are backing Trump at the highest rate of any demographic group, including white primary voters, according to the New York Times poll. And then it's got in here the numbers, and Trump is 68%. DeSantis is 13%, and Mike Pence is at 2%, and Nikki Haley is at 1%, and then Ramaswamy, he's coming in at about 4%. So, well, it says 0 here, but no, it says 4. Yeah, 4%. So, Vivek Ramaswamy, I think he's, he's a way down there, but at least he's a businessman, kind of a self-made millionaire, so to speak. And his folks came here as immigrants, and he grew up the American way, freedom and liberty, and he's been quite successful. And so, but I kind of enjoy listening to him talk, just because he's young and certainly inexperienced when it comes to the political system. But I think he's got some great ideas, and like Trump, he's a self-made millionaire, which I can't say that any of those other politicians in there are truly a hands-on self-made millionaires. They figured out a way to make themselves millionaires, all right. And I think kind of like the Bidens, they're multi-millionaires, perhaps billionaires, but how many of them ever had a real job? How many of them got up at 8 o'clock in the morning and went to work and came home at noon and ate lunch and then went back to work? I don't know that any of them did, but the more evidence that comes out about all these bribery schemes and scandals and all the stuff they've been involved in, it's just hard to believe. But
well, looking at the Real Clear Politics averages for each of the candidates, Trump has 54% support in the Republican nomination, DeSantis 18.3%, Ramaswamy's third at 4.9%, Pence is fourth, 4.3%, Haley 3.5%, Scott 3.0%, Christie 2.4%, Burgum 0.6%, and Hutchinson 0.6%, and Hurd 0.2%. So Trump has a 35-point lead. And, you hear that the Democrats are trying to get Trump to be the nominee. But I'll tell you what, you may regret that, because right now the people in the middle, the moderates, are skewing more with the Republicans than they are with the Democrats. When you look at how they feel about the economy, when you look at, and I noticed, CNN continues to carry water for the Democratic Party, because yesterday their main headline said, middle income earners believe they will be better off 10 years from now, that they're trending in the right direction in over a decade.
Yeah, I guess they have to look that far forward, because you certainly can't look forward to the next 10 years, I don't think.
Well,
10 years, I don't think.
Well, they didn't say 10 days or 10 months.
Yeah.
People don't believe that's going to be better then.
Yeah.
But that 10 years from now, and who doesn't feel like 10 years from now you'll be better off than you are today?
Well, you should be. You should be, but I'm not sure under the current policies that we are, because we've got a boatload of folks here that came across the border illegally, and somehow they're either going to have to go home, a good majority of them, or we're going to have to figure out a place in the workplace and start getting those folks to working to make themselves a living. They cannot continue to rely on government, which is our tax money. They cannot rely on that forever and expect us to provide them a living, and they live, you know, fancy free. Somewhere we've got to find, you know, several million jobs for those folks. You know, I don't understand how we plan to do that, but every day there's another, you know, 2 or 3, 4, 5, 10,000 come across the border without, you know, without any prior commitments or anything. They just come, and they're being welcomed by this regime, you know, by the Biden administration, and they've done all kinds of things to, you know, make you believe that things are fine and good. I seen that kind of reminds me, I seen a article on Breitbart News, and it's about this sex trafficking thing that, you know, the Sound of Freedom, I think, has brought a lot of interest into what are we really doing. Are we, you know, promoting that, or who's promoting it, or whatever? But it's apparently kind of jolted the non-believers and the believers into, you know, something that, hey, this is serious business. But anyway, this is from Breitbart News. It said a young girl was trafficked across the United States-Mexico border by an illegal alien sex offender who had rented her with the hopes of getting released into the nation's interior. Representative Kat Cammack, Republican of Florida, detailed in a chilling case before the Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra. During the House Energy and Commerce Secretary hearing this week, Becerra was pressed for answers on his handling of unaccompanied alien children, which are UACs, who arrived at the southern border in the hands of cartel smugglers and eventually placed in the homes with adult sponsors across the United States, whom HHS is tasked with vetting. The overwhelming majority of the sponsors are not the biological parents of the UACs. They apply to take, and there have been a number of cases a Florida grand jury found where HHS has sent many UACs to the same sponsor. In testimony, Cammack detailed the case of a young girl at the border whom said she witnessed with a illegal alien sex offender who ultimately admitted he was not her father as he initially claimed, according to Cammack. The man said that he had rented the girl to get into the United States. It was 11:46 p.m. at night. I myself took this photo, and it shows a picture of that guy holding that little girl. She was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old maybe. That little girl that you might, that you see acting terrified, not of the agents, not of myself, but the man holding her. That's who that little girl was scared of. The very next day at the Donner Processing Facility, we threatened, and I was there to witness this man with a DNA test. He confessed that he actually was not her father and that he had rented her. This is a process called recycling. Now I know where we're here to talk about what happened to the kids after the point, but this little girl was then turned over to HHS custody to talking to Becerra, turned over to his custody, or his agency custody. Cammack said the UACs at the border often arrive with numbers pinned on their clothes or stapled or sharpied on their bodies to call, and that oftentimes the same sponsor is being called, and magically 20, 30, 40 kids end up with that sponsor. There are a number of instances where the example girls have been placed with older men in what is clearly an exploitive situation, Vaughn said. There are kids who have turned over, been turned over to labor traffickers. There are kids that get turned over to gang members. There are kids who get placed into domestic servitude and other forms of abuse. It really is quite horrific. As Breitbart News has reported, the inflow of UACs to the United States has tripled under the Biden watch. The Biden first 2 years, close to 300,000 UACs have arrived at the border and were released into the United States interior to adult sponsors. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea about, the continued trafficking and the effort been made to get those kids into here. And if you went to see, The Sound of Freedom, to me that story plays right into what's going on there. I think Catholic Charities, very disappointed to say, is involved in that effort of moving those kids around the country. Don't know who their parents are, but they're quite quite the effort. To been just anybody that wants to take one of them, well, here you go, and what you do with them, I guess, is up to you. So, a sad situation to think that the United States is involved in that, and one of these agencies, Health and Human Services, is promoting the idea. But there you go.
Well, I would think that if you're quote unquote renting a child, that's somehow slavery, which is illegal.
Yeah.
And these people who are quote unquote renting children, that's like an ultimate violation of a law, of a human being, and they should be jailed for that.
Yep.
I mean, you don't rent kids. Kids are not rentable. Kid mows a lawn, you pay them for their services, and that kind of thing.
Yep.
But to rent a kid so that you can illegally enter a country, that's fraud. That's child trafficking. There's all kinds of things wrong with that.
Yeah.
But where's the administration?
Yeah. Well, where's their parents? How'd they end up there?
They got the check. That's who
if-
they paid the rent to. They didn't pay the rent to
Yeah.
the kid.
Yeah. I don't know. Thinking about that Sound of Freedom, that first part of it, when that lady talked that guy into letting her take his daughter and his son to these, dance class or whatever it was, music class or something. I knew right then that, that's when I kind of started getting ticked off right there, because I knew that wasn't her, her real ambition. It was to turn them into being sex trafficked or for whatever reason, child labor, all of those things and more. But that was just exactly what this was. They stole the kids. But if you listen to this administration, a lot of times you'll hear them say that no, your kids are not yours. They belong to the government. That's the way Chinese, that's the way the Chinese Communist government operates. All kids that are born are property of the government, and they use them, for whatever need they need them for, slave labor or whatever. But, to think that goes on in the United States, and 300,000 of those kids have came across the border since Biden has been in office. What in the world is wrong?
Rented.
The world is wrong.
Rented.
Yeah. Yeah.
What kind of parent is it that would even allow their kid to do? Of course, if you're in such desperate situation and you say, hey, they'll have a better shot if they can get to America than they're ever going to have here. But, and that is a beautiful thing about America. But we can't do that for everybody, because the whole rest of the world, and we talked about a little bit yesterday what Ayn Rand said, but I'll tell you, if you really want to change Latin America, is when you say, start doing the things that America does that made it the place you want to go to.
Yeah.
Stop appointing dictators. Stop letting the drug cartels run your show. Put this communism stuff to bed. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. Look what it did to Venezuela. And you can say Cuba, and you can say China. Everywhere it's been attempted, it does not raise the standard of living for anybody.
No.
So, but no, what do? We trade with them. We normalize it. We say, and if you can't hack it, then just come on in and we'll take care of you. That's not how it's supposed to work. They should have to improve those areas, but we don't require that. So all of the people that stay that can't get away are still living under abject poverty and under the thumb of a regime or a drug lord or something like that. And the way that you got to change that is you support American values abroad. You say, no, America's going to look out for America, and the people of Venezuela, the people of Mexico, and let me tell you something, when the people of Mexico finally get tired of it, they'll have a revolution down there. But why would you when you can just sneak across to run from it? You know, that doesn't change Mexico. That allows those that stay there to continue to exploit the people.
Sure.
To that top 2% stays the top 2%. There's no way. You know, at least we have steps in the ladder. There is no ladder in Mexico.
Well, through the sex trafficking, I think Epstein was a prime example of that. He didn't have a real job, but he had a well-established business of this kind of stuff, and for some reason he hung himself. But the amount of money that's involved in this, just follow the money, and we'll see. But like all of these agencies that are taking busloads of those kids in various places, the federal government is paying for those services. You haul them here, you haul them there, but where do they end up? Do they end up as a rented kid again? And it's not limited to kids. I think women are, as well being transferred around for various purposes, and that's not the American way, but it is this administration's way, and they're promoting it. They're protecting it, just like they're protecting Joe from, all his efforts of scamming people out of millions of bucks.
I'm looking at another article here. CNN is saying that half of the country is prepared to vote for Trump again, and other half for Biden, and here's why. And they're going to try to explain to you as if they know why people vote the way they do. And this is written by Ronald Brownstein, so I need to give Ronald Brownstein just a little education here. So I'm going to read this paragraph, and then I'll explain to you, why you can't trust these people. But it says, the parties now represent coalitions with such divergent vision of America's future. That's true. The parties now represent, I'll read that again. The parties now represent coalitions with such divergent visions of America's future. That's true. Now I'm going to read the part that's not true. Particularly whether it welcomes or resists racial and cultural change. That's unclear what could allow one side to break out from the close competition between them. And that includes the prospect of Republicans choosing a presidential nominee who could be shuttling between the campaign trail and the courtroom. So first of all, let me explain this part where they threw it in here, saying the difference is whether that party welcomes or resists racial and cultural change. See, that's what they want you to believe. They want you to believe that one party welcomes racial and cultural change and the other party resists racial and cultural change. First of all, when it comes to race, Republicans and Democrats do have very different views of race. Republicans don't want to see color. They want to see us as Americans. Democrats force you to identify as your color. Democrats who've run minority-based communities for decades have done zero to bring any of those people out of poverty.
Yeah, well, just look at those big cities all the Democrats are in charge of, and look at the economic conditions in those.
But you go to a place where Republicans are in the political control, and the minorities there have just as much right and just as much access as anybody else, because they're not looked at as a race or a minority. They're looked at as citizens of the city that they're in or the state. So do we have different views? Yes, but one's not welcoming racial change. One's trying to say that races are victims and therefore can't survive on their own. The other side says, no, we believe in you. We support you. We want to see you thrive. We want you to go to a good school. We want your kids to be able to advance as far as they possibly can. The other side provides you failed schools, schools that are 100% dominated by minority leadership. Baltimore, New York, Detroit, Philadelphia,
San Francisco.
And those kids aren't getting an education at all. Now let's talk about cultural change for a minute. It's not to accept cultural change to say that boys and girls are no longer boys and girls. That's not cultural change. That is some sort of deviant manipulation. To say that you're not who you were born to be by the physical attributes you have, that you were born in the wrong body. We're seeing more and more people come out and say detransitioning and saying they were sold a bill of goods that wasn't good. Now let me tell you, not everybody's the most popular kid in school. So someone will say, if I just had a do-over, if I could have done it differently. So what these people are giving them is this false hope as, oh, you'd be different as a girl, or you'd be different as a boy. You should have been a girl. You should have been a boy. And you know what happens when they make that transition and they still aren't the most popular kid in school? Then they're like, I thought I was going to change. I thought this was going to make me different. I thought this was going to make me somebody different. Now, how many people wouldn't go back and say, I would have done some things different in my teenage years? I think maybe 99.9% of the people would say, I could have done some things different in my teenage years. But changing your sex shouldn't be the thing that they tell you is the only thing that changes that. Or parents being told it's either to allow them to transition or suicide, as if those are the only two options. And this is what parents are being told. So when you're talking about cultural change, there's a big difference between accepting, being accepting of all cultures and trying to change the sex of kids. Now, an adult wants to go out and dress however they want to and present themselves however they want to, knock yourself out. You're an adult. What we're talking about is not abusing or exploiting children in this push for, some sort of sexual ambiguity. You're an adult, you want to do that? Fine. Then if you say it's a mistake, you go back, fine. We've all made mistakes. But to say, that one party welcomes these kind of things and the other one resists it, no, we should all be looking out for children. You just read stories about children being affected. So the Democrats say, well, those kids are going to have a better life because they were brought over here. And someone else is saying, they rented kids. That should be wrong.
Yeah.
So this whole idea being presented by Brownstein here is already based on his bias of saying that this is the differences in the parties, which is 100% a lie. Because one side isn't resisting racial change. One side fought for it. It was called the Civil War. There was a Republican Party who fought against the Democrat slaveholders. So don't give me this garbage about one side resists racial change. What racial change are they resisting? If you're qualified and you're the best at what you do, the good thing about the conservative side is they don't look and see what color it says on a piece of paper when they look at your resume. They say, look at the training, look at where they've been, look at what they've done. This is a person that can do a good job here.
Yep.
When they look at putting someone in a college class, they're not looking at the color of skin, they're saying, these are the grades, this is their ambition, this is their letter saying this is how it could really change their life to be part of the program. This could really help this person. Let's get this person in. As opposed to, well, this person did a really great job, worked top of the class, but they can't get in because we have to put in a certain number of people based on physical attributes. Why don't we start saying people with big noses? I'm in. When do the big nose people get to be put on a list? You know, that it would be ridiculous. But it's the same thing when we start picking people based on attributes,
Yeah.
as opposed to intelligence, ability. And if that kid's not ready, I'd say, who failed that kid? Who didn't have that kid ready? Where did they go to school? Where was their high school? Why didn't they get them ready? Why aren't we really addressing those? But what do you think about this, where they try to outline that right out of the bat about talking about why half the country is going to vote for Trump is because half the people are resisting racial and cultural change? Is that what it is?
To keep things divided, keep us divided. And if you don't understand, that, well, you perhaps believe all of that garbage. But, it's the content of your character, it's your abilities and your knowledge and your know-how. That's what once upon a time would promote you, or the lack of those things would probably get you a demotion. But it's all an effort to keep everybody divided. But as I kind of continue to watch this thing, perhaps come to a head, I think that there's a change going on, and I think the people, no matter what color they are or what their abilities are beginning to see this, and that really scares the opposition. I think is because we, the people, are really coming together on a lot of this stuff, saying no, we're not going to put up with this division anymore. Just because my neighbors, perhaps a different color, doesn't mean if something happened I wouldn't go mow his yard. But that's not the way the government would do that. They'd say, oh, you can't go there because that guy's a different color, or he's got different beliefs, or whatever. So, it's all an effort to continue to keep us divided, because they know once that the people become united, that old saying, divided, united we stand, divided we fall. I think that's exactly, what this attempt is to keep us divided, because we are going to be mighty, mighty strong group by being united, And so look out, here we come.
So let me tell you what all these charges are against Trump. This is the accidental truth that you find in an article like this. But a Brightline Watch survey found that most independents don't believe Trump committed a crime. And that's deadly for Democrats, because if at this point all of the garbage that they've thrown isn't sticking, then a majority of independents are ready to go support a Trump election. That will kill the Democrats for sure. But in that same poll, if he's convicted of a crime, then 3/4 of independents would not support Trump. So what's this all about? Democrats would never support Trump no matter what. And Republicans have thrown out Biden. Even if some went and voted for him last time, they said he lied. He is not the middle of the road guy he said he was. I just didn't like the way Trump spoke, but this is not what we were told we were going to get. This is the most partisan president we've had in our history, maybe next to Woodrow Wilson. And so the Democrats are on their side, the Republicans are on their side. They're both looking to the middle, the independents. And most of the independents say, if Trump's not convicted of a crime, we're voting Trump. That scares Democrats to death. They have to not just charge him, because the charges are there. And that hasn't changed the independents. He has to be convicted of a crime, which he has never been in his life. So, you want to know what this is all about? It's all about, we've got to win the independent vote, and the only way we can win it is we got to convict this guy.
That Trump has spent approximately $40 million on attorneys since the first of the year. Now, I think it was 40 million. Now, what individual could afford that kind of a representation from legal defense, you know, not very many people. You know, I think that you know, they indicted his maintenance guy at Mar-a-Lago. I think that was his title, the maintenance guy or whatever he was anyway. They indicted him, and he has to rely on the court to provide him an attorney because he don't have the kind of money that, you know, Trump does. But once they take in after you, you know, I think probably more important than convicting you perhaps is bankrupting you so you can't proceed. And you know, Trump's got some pretty deep pockets, but when you think about spending that kind of money, my goodness, think of what, you know, that many millions of dollars, or you know, $1 million would do if it was put towards a good cause. You know, perhaps taking $1 million down there and rescuing some of those kids that have been trafficked across the border, and you know, caring for those, place them in homes that, you know, they deserve, where they're protected and secured and get a good education. But no, we're too busy, you know, fighting, you know, and filing very questionable charges, you know, on this. But yet you have a president that there's far more evidence of wrongdoing there, according to me, you know, and nothing ever happens to that side. Why? I mean, why has the federal government been weaponized? And I think that's very true. It has. He put the right folks in the right place to protect his hide. And you know, I think they mentioned that Obama didn't want him to run, and I think probably that was because he knew the consequences if ever this, you know, somebody got to digging into this, and how Joe got to be a multi-millionaire, perhaps a billionaire or 2 billion, who knows how much. But perhaps he knew more than what he's claiming to, because he's always pretty solid on this. But you know, it's just a shame that we've got two systems of justice, one for we and one for thee. And the thee part of it is well protected at all causes and all attempts. I don't know what kind of money we've spent, we the taxpayers, because we're the ones that's funding all of this stuff to protect Biden. Like it or not, you know, our tax money is supporting these, you know, the Department of Justice and the CIA and the FBI and all of that. We're supporting what they're doing, and you know, it's time for this small group of House of Representatives to start looking at what they're going to fund and what they're not going to fund, because you know, in a short few months after they get back off of their 6-week vacation, they better dang well have a plan in sight as to what they're going to continue to fund and what they're not. And there's a lot of this stuff that I think it's time to pull the plug on and say no more, we're not funding that. But you know, whether they will or not, I don't know. You know, it's kind of like this impeachment thing. The more, you know, why did they have to take a recess? I think they should have stayed in Washington. I think there was business to, you know, urgent business to be done. You know, not only on the impeachment consideration, but you know, on a lot of this stuff. I think they should have stayed there, but now they all went home and, you know, going to make excuses to the folks they represent. So, but that's what we have right now.
Well, and in this article, it spent 90% of the time trashing Trump, and the only criticism of Biden was his age. They said the only thing voters care about with Biden was his age. Like, they don't care? You think they don't care about his son's dealings? They don't care that they were selling out the country? They don't care that he's weak on China? They don't care that looks like, you know, he had his hand in the cookie jar in Ukraine? You know, this is why you can't be trusted, CNN, Ronald Brownstein. I asked you to give me some answers on that. I'd post that on your site and ask you that, but you don't allow that. You like to give your opinion, but you don't like anyone else to question you on it. I would like to tell everyone right now, you can question us all you want. Every article that we put out on liberalfirst.com, you can comment on it. Whether you like it, whether you don't like it, whether you think it's a bunch of garbage, whether you thought it was nice, you can say whatever you want to. CNN won't allow you to do that. You can go do that on Fox News. Fox News will allow you to comment on their stories. So what does that tell you about CNN? What does that tell you when they're not willing, they want to tell you how to think,
Sure.
but they won't allow you to question any of it? Why do you think that is? That's what elitism is. Elitism is a talker, not a listener. And that's why they won't listen to you. They won't listen to you. You can't tell this Ronald Brownstein, where do you get off saying that one party is against race? That is garbage. Garbage. One party isn't for culture change? Are you kidding me? It's one thing, cultural changes all the time and people embrace that. What we're talking about preserving is the foundational freedom purpose of this country. The documents that expanded freedom not based on color at all, just the opposite. That's why we were able to get rid of the prejudices and the racism and slavery and all of the bad things in the past, because the documents pushed us to be better than we were. We still believe that. You may not believe them, but we do. No one can question you, Mr. Brownstein, because you don't have the courage to accept it. Just want to point that out. Another thing, some people are questioning the commitment of the U.S. women's soccer team because they had a tie, another tie, you know, they're the most anti-U.S. team I've ever seen of anything. You know, women on there don't care about the, some do. Some will stand and salute the flag. Others just don't even care at all. They're more concerned with their sexual identity and pushing that than they are with soccer, I think. I'm glad one of them is going to be retiring at the end of this year. But, you know, what do you think? I mean, now criticism's starting to come in because, I mean, these are smaller, a lot smaller nations that we're struggling to compete with on the national level in soccer. And yet, you know, here's this politically driven women's team.
You know, I think this is kind of like the recruitment in the military. You know, folks are starting, you know, those that are eligible have decided, no, I don't want to go join a team that thinks like that. I don't want to join the military that thinks like that. I don't want to do these things. And so I think there's, you know, probably some it's going to become more difficult to recruit folks to that kind of a mentality, and that's what it is. It's a mentality. But I think it's going to become more and more difficult. So, you know, who's going to be there to pick up the reins after those folks are done? Probably not very many. But it's you know, a disdain for the American way of life is what it is. But I don't know what they think that is going to be better. I just don't understand. You know, I guess if you know, you can, you know, post and tell us if we continue down this path, you know, of sports or whatever it is, and that division and that mentality, you know, how is that going to make things better? I don't see that. I think we've had a pretty good example of that in the last 2.5 years since Biden got in there. Are things really better with this kind of mentality running the place? Maybe it is for some, but I know there's a great lot of them that if you just watch the poll numbers and the approvals and the disapprovals, I think, you know, the vote's coming in, and it's coming in pretty strong that no, we don't want to continue this way of life. You know, things would be better under, you know, a different plan and different policies. So, you know, but I don't know. I guess there's still 35-40% out there that believe that, yeah, we're gonna reach that utopia, but I'm not sure what kind of utopia it's going to be.
Well, and they're hoping that some economic, like they believe that lowering inflation will turn the voters around to the Democratic side. Good luck with that. That's all I can tell you. Good
Well,
luck
you know,
with
they
that.
can lower that, but it's just like every time they raise the price of eggs, you know, it'll go up 30, 40%, and then it'll drop maybe 10. Oh, well, yeah, things are cheaper now, but it's still costing you 20 more.
It's not
you know.
cheaper than before this guy took office,
That's
and that's
right.
what you'll be compared to.
That's right. You know, we've set a new standard and a new level, but you know, we're all going to pay more for a long, long time.
So with the event going on over in Plains, we're gonna keep ourselves here to time, and we're gonna bring your squeaky clean car wash weather report. Today's gonna be mostly sunny and hot with a high near 101. Southwest wind 10 to 14 miles per hour. Tonight, a slight chance of showers and thunderstorms between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. Increasing clouds with a low around 74. South wind 10 to 15 miles per hour. Chance of precipitation is 20%. Looking ahead to the rest of your week, Wednesday 99, Thursday 97, Friday chance of thunderstorms in the evening, high 94. Saturday, chance of rain, 60% chance. You're looking at 93. Sunday, 20% chance, 84 for a high. And Monday, 20% chance, 83 for a high. So nice, cool beginning to the week in the 80s next week.
Some of that rain won't hurt a thing.
So that's the news and views you can use on the High Plains Tuesday, August 1st, 2023. We'll be back with you again tomorrow to get you through Hump Day. And tonight, we'll be back with you tonight at 7 o'clock right here. And we don't have a ton of seats, but if you want to come in and watch live, you're welcome to come down to 16 South Kansas. As the results come in, we'll bring them to you. We'll get them posted right here on the show and let people know who the 6 city commission candidates are that will be advancing to the general election in November. So make sure you get out and vote today, Liberal. And tonight, join us back here at 7 o'clock, live, the results of today's primary election. So that's the news and views you can use until tomorrow. Until tonight, 7 o'clock. This is Earl with the Leader in Times with Jim Rice saying, when you live in Liberal,
Or New York City.
there's no place like home.